And I was brought up in Soviet Union, and that's a very different kind of world. So it's a country where entrepreneurship was illegal, personal growth was frowned upon. So very pragmatical, very skeptical, and very non-entrepreneurial.
It's the experiences you have. It's, renting a boat and taking a ride through the coast, or taking a parasailing trip, or going on a tour excursion to see dolphins or whales. Like, these are the experiences that you remember from a vacation, not necessarily, your hotel.
Alltruists creates at-home volunteer and impact projects for kids and families. 90% of people say that they want to volunteer, and only about a third of us get around to doing so.
This is Richard Gearhart from Passage to Profit. You just heard from some of our guests. They were fantastic. Stay with us for more Passage to Profit. I'm Richard Gearhart. Welcome to Passage to Profit, the show that's all about entrepreneurs, small businesses, and the intellectual property that helps them flourish. Unfortunately, my beautiful, lovely wife, co-host Elizabeth Gearhart, can't be with us tonight. She's got the dreaded COVID germ. So, Kenya, I would like to propose to you and ask you, will you be my co-host?
Oh, I'm happy to be your co-host, and I hope I do an okay job. Those are big shoes to fill, Elizabeth, so I'm honored.
Okay, well, I'm glad that I'm glad that you're able to accept this daunting challenge, and I'm sure you'll just be great because you're absolutely a natural when it comes to this stuff. Thank you. So before we get going, I want to first introduce our guests, and I'm probably not going to do a great job with her last name, so she can correct me if she wants to. But it's Kristina Mand-Lakhiani. Is that close enough?
It's close enough to be recognizable. Thank you.
Well, it's obviously it's not perfect, but Kristina, can you pronounce your full name just so everybody in the audience knows exactly who you are?
I'm Kristina Mand-Lakhiani, and you can imagine with a family name like that, I'm quite used to it being shortened, simplified, or mispronounced, so it's fine.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us on our show. Kristina is the co-founder of Mindvalley, a personal growth and transformational speaker. So we really look forward to having her on the show. And I've seen your website. It's absolutely amazing. And I think you're going to have a lot of great content for us and our audience. And after Kristina, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll move to Kenya's power move as usual. And then after that, we're going to have Greg Fisher, who's going to be talking about traveling and getting back in the swing of things in these days of COVID. I'm sure Greg has a lot of great tips for us. And then after Greg, Jessica Jackely from Alltruists, and we look forward to hearing about her project as well. But before we get to our distinguished guests, it's time for IP in the News. And so today we're going to feature a very, very, very interesting patent, and probably a little bit apropos, considering we're in the middle still of the COVID pandemic. And this patent was issued to the inventor, Robert L. Smenton of Split Rock Avenue in Palms, California. And the application was filed in 1963. So the application's expired now. And if there are any budding entrepreneurs that would like to take on this project, you can do it because the patent is expired. Patents expire 20 years after their filing date. So, and in this case, and in this time, this patent expired in 1987. So it's well past its prime. But Robert came up with the idea of putting a decorative cover on a syringe. So the pictures in the patent actually show a plastic sleeve in the shape of a bunny rabbit that goes over the syringe. And the reason for doing this is to keep children from being fearful when they're inoculated. So personally, I wonder if that's really going to have the intended effect. I mean, I think that if a kid gets stabbed with a bunny syringe, they're probably going to be living in fear of bunnies for the rest of their life. But maybe the first one won't be so bad. But afterwards, who knows what kind of effect this could have on kids. And so anyway, we thought it was kind of a funny syringe. Kenya, do you have any thoughts on this patent?
It's kind of like, what's that saying? They put the candy in the medicine, I guess.
Yeah, a
like
spoonful of sugar, but it's now evil bunny that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the thought process behind it, right? So, creating something that's not so great as an experience and turning it into something and creating that association with a bunny. But I think it could have some damaging effects down the line for sure.
Well, the other thing that when I was looking at the patent, they had like a solid bunny going over it. So you couldn't see really how much medicine was in the syringe. So I guess you'd have to, draw the syringe and then put the cover on it. Because otherwise the nurse or doctor is just guessing, I guess, on the amount of medicine that's going into the kid. So
it's not a completely awful idea. Go ahead, Jessica.
I'm sorry. No, I have 4 kids and 3 of them are of age and could get vaxxed recently. And it just feels like it's in this category of bad parenting, like trajectories. So what are you going to do? Lie to them and say, watch the bunny hop over to your arm and then just kidding. Like, I mean, what is the dialogue that even happens before this? I think it's not a good idea.
It's just like, here comes the airplane into your mouth with the food. That's a little different, don't you think? I mean, that, but I don't know. Greg, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think a decorative syringe is fun. Anytime that you can, personalize an experience for a kid at a dentist office or hospital or whatever is good, but putting a character on there will be damaging. I mean, because now they're going to, just like you said, they're going to, like, let's say you put a cartoon character on, they're going to think about that experience every time they, because shots are not fun. I mean, you ask these kids, like 9.9 out of 10 are going to tell you they hate them. So yeah, I think a decorative is cool, but it's probably going to have to be something that's not going to, align with a character or something.
Yeah, I'm surprised Disney doesn't have their characters on syringes, right? They're everywhere else. Right?
Probably why.
Great. Christina, what are your thoughts?
When you were showing this pattern, it reminded me of clown-shaped and ice cream-shaped garbage bins in Ecuador, in one small town that produces ice cream. It was rather creepy to look at. But on a more serious note, maybe it's not such a bad idea for the kids to be afraid of bunnies. Bunnies can actually bite pretty sharp and painful.
Oh, you mean like the Monty Python, killer rabbit thing? If you're too old or too young, you may not know that, but yeah. I mean, that, if you put like a poisonous snake cover or something on it, it might actually save the kid's life one day or something. So that's a very good point. Well, thank you everybody for your comments on the bunny syringe. It's off patent now, which means that if you're passionate about this idea, despite our opinion, then you can move forward with it and go out and pursue it. So, and who knows, maybe somebody will find a way to take the idea and make it a positive thing, which is
maybe we could put politicians on them, right? That's a good idea.
I was just your least favorite, right?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's very funny. So it's time now for our guest interview with Kristina Mand-Lakhiani. I'm going to keep working on this one. And so nice to have you, Kristina. I know that you've been active in the personal transformation space for a while now, and you're co-founder of Mindvalley, which is really a wonderful website. Can you talk a little bit about Mindvalley?
Well, Mindvalley is an education platform, and I've been in business for 18 years now. So we are probably one of the most prominent education platforms in the sphere of personal growth and transformation. And we provide education in the areas which are important for your life, for a happy, fulfilled, extraordinary, meaningful life. But obviously, academic education doesn't give you all this knowledge. So it's anywhere from body and health and nutrition to much more, maybe for some people questionable areas, but let's say say, more fringe areas, including even energy work or lucid dreaming and things like that. So we provide education in personal growth and transformation. That's what we do.
Well, that's great. I mean, how many different programs do you have on the website? It looks like a lot.
So it's not just a website, it's a full-on education institution, I would call it. So because we have live events, we have huge live events, I mean, long and certification programs and all sorts of levels of education. Currently, we work with maybe about 50 authors, maybe a little less, depends on how you look at that. We have English-speaking authors, we have other languages as well. When we have events, then of course there are many more going through our stage. So pretty much anybody, any big name in personal growth transformation has either worked with us, done an interview with us, or been on our stage.
Yeah, I was going to say Mindvalley is huge. I actually was introduced to it, I would say 5 or 6 years ago, and have taken some of the courses that are on there. And it's just, it's an incredible platform, and the transformation opportunities that you offer for all different types of creative people, I think just are close to none that are offered out there. How did you get involved initially in co-founding Mindvalley? Like, what was your trajectory towards, creating such a platform?
Kenya, thank you so much for kind words about Mindvalley, by the way, and for following us for this year, all these years. I got involved in Mindvalley very by accident. So I can give the pre-story. Basically, I was born in Soviet Union, so a long time ago. And I was brought up in Soviet Union, and that's a very different kind of world. So it's a country where entrepreneurship was illegal, personal growth was frowned upon. So very pragmatical, very skeptical, and very non-entrepreneurial kind of background. And then I got married to Vishen, who is the founder of Mindvalley, the face of Mindvalley in English language. So I moved to New York. He was on a foreign visa. I had no way to work in America. I was not allowed. So nothing better to do. I was helping him to start the business. That's how it started. But it wasn't my it wasn't my dream from childhood, or it wasn't my hobby or anything. I got involved into that by chance, and of course over years it grew on me, and actually it shifted my trajectory into actually taking personal growth as the work of my life now.
So do people really grow? I mean, I think I'm Mr. Number One self-improvement. I'm Mr. Number One planner. I'm Mr. But yeah. When we say grow, what do we mean by grow?
That's a very interesting question. So we do call it personal growth, but generally it's any non-academic education that you require. So anywhere from your health questions, of course, body, nutrition and fitness and so on, relationships. We have had programs on, and still have programs on, let's say, relationships with money. But it also has areas which are more spiritual, for example. So when it comes to personal growth, I think it's a question that every person has to answer themselves, because for different people, the growth and transformation is different. Obviously, we take different academic degrees in universities for a reason, because we are different human beings. We have different callings, different interests. So the same with personal growth. It's such a wide niche. You can't really say that, this is the path for everyone. One thing I do want to say, I actually would like us to move away from self-help or personal kind of personal improvement terminology, because I'm a huge fan of professional help, not self-help. I think it may be a self-motivated search for professional help in the areas where you require that help. But helping yourself is not a good idea, especially if it comes to any important area in life. Like my huge passion in psychology, a lot of people actually suffer from anxiety, from depression, and the idea of actually helping yourself with that kind of problems is not good. So I believe that what we do is not self-help. In essence, it's actually finding professionals who can help people who have problems which are not being solved by academic education.
Right. But because you're taking a class and getting more education doesn't necessarily mean you have a problem, right? I mean, it can be aspirational too. I personally feel like I sort of have my act together, although if Elizabeth, my co-host, were here, vehemently disagree. But I'm still interested in learning new things, and I like to stick my neck out and try different things with, just because it brings a little bit more excitement to my life, or I gain new skills. But just, if I kind of stopped growing right now, if I stopped doing like that, I'd be fine. We'd have a good family life and everything else. So it's not just...
There are different ways of, I'm sorry for interruption, but there are different ways to approach that kind of question, if you actually were asking a question directly. The thing is that I like the idea of Harvecker. He's most known for his millionaire mind training. But he says whatever doesn't grow is dying. Which in essence, like if you look in biology, it is true. You actually do need to move somewhere. The question is, a philosophical question is any movement kind of growth, or is any kind of growth or transformation, is it all for good? That's not necessarily so, right? Not every experience will make you stronger, will make you better. So that's sure. Another facet of what you were talking about, unfortunately, most people come to personal growth because of big pain. That's unfortunate because, it's like with doctors. People very often come to doctors when it's already so late, it's hard to help. So the same with personal growth. I would wish people actually didn't have to learn how to deal with depression, rather that they were taught emotional, literacy, simple things, how not to fall into depression. And of course, if you are into marketing, you know that any marketing of any sphere is usually built and based on pain. So it's no wonder we actually search for people who are in pain, because that's how marketing works, essentially. But you are absolutely right.
I hope our Passage to Profit listeners are not in pain. We certainly wish them the best. But what you're saying is certainly a type of marketing that people pursue. So,
I'm not talking about any particular marketing. I'm definitely not talking about ourselves, but that's actually the in the core of a lot of things that are popular. There is this pain point, whether it's marketing, which is, unfortunately, a lot of marketing is built on triggering the pain points. It's truth for entertainment, actually, for the news. People kind of get triggered by strong emotion. That's why I'm saying, unfortunately, a lot of people search for help when they're in pain, not because of anything else. Yet, I think we should also move from the idea that I'll learn, I'll get education, and then I'll start living. Because that's not how life works. You don't take a shower today, or let's say in January, so for the rest of the year you can be clean. You do it on a daily basis because that's the basic hygiene, physical bodily hygiene. So when it comes to personal growth, I believe that when we stop taking it as something, to prepare for real life and look at it as a lifestyle, then you won't be coming for personal growth out of pain. You will actually do that for a lot of different reasons, out of curiosity, out of desire to actually maybe expand yourself, maybe find deeper meaning in what you're doing. Or there are so many ways why you might want to learn to keep your brain young.
I mean, I think, having a positive desire is healthy. And so maybe the desire is not imminent, like being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or something, right? That triggers all of these fear emotions, but you still have to have a desire to move on. And whether it's to solve a small pain, maybe my desires are for small pains as opposed to large pains. But it's I think what drives a lot of what we do. Kenya, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I was agreeing with you, Christina, because I do believe that pain can be purposeful, right? It's always some sort of indicator that something's going on, whether it's something medically or something emotionally. It's really the thing that gets our attention. So I think sometimes we try to avoid getting to that place, but I see your point in, trying to get ahead of that, right? Like not waiting until it's something so prominent or something so painful, and kind of being intentional about just getting ahead of what potentially could become problematic later on. So I totally get where you're going with that. And I also saw that you are an author of a book called Living by Your Own Rules. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about what that means. Oh, it's on your shirt.
It's actually an accident that it's on my shirt.
Well, there's never any accidents.
That's okay. You can plug things on Passage to Profit. No problem.
That's that's a program, and I'm moving away from that name into actually talking about being flawsome. I like the word flawsome. It's not my creation, but it's not been claimed, so I'm not sure.
What does it mean? What does the word flawsome mean? I'm not even sure I know what that means.
In line with the beginning of our conversation, I have to say I don't know about the IP rights for the word flawsome yet.
No, I think
so maybe
okay. So, well, you are going to tell us though, because you can't use the word flawsome without telling us.
So my interpretation of the word flawsome is that you can still be awesome with all your flaws, but if you go a little bit deeper into that, is that I do hope that people, regular human beings, learn to love themselves with all their quirks, weirdness, mistakes, imperfections, and not despite them, with them, not despite them, and actually see or find strength in what makes you, you, rather than trying to become something different. So, and it might sound such a weird concept, considering that I'm one of the co-founders of Personal Growth and Transformation company, but it's not controversial, in fact, because we have, a lot of us have an idea that for you to want to grow, you have to have a problem, or for you to want to become better, you have to not be satisfied with what you are right now. But it is actually an illusion. That's not how it works. If you know the simplest thing about, let's say, depression, one of the expressions of depression is where you are so low, you have no motivation, no energy, no interest to do anything. That's when you kind of stop and freeze. So movement is actually our natural movement, and growth and transformation and evolution and change is in our nature. And I believe that you only want to grow and become better when you're actually at peace with yourself. When you're at peace with your current version, that's when you're ready to actually become something different. So another example, one of our students asked, actually, that was a question given to another teacher, but I'll just retell that story. She's a psychotherapist. So the student asked her, but if I think that I'm good enough, that I'm lovable enough, that I'm good the way I am I not going to lie in bed and be complacent and not want to do anything? And her answer was so sharp. She said, you are lying in bed and doing nothing, not because you think you're good enough, it's because you're afraid that you're not enough. When you believe in yourself, when you love yourself, when you accept yourself, when you really have the faith in you, that's when you find courage to go and challenge yourself and to do something meaningful in the life. That's why I don't think there is any controversy. And I do believe that most of the problems that we have with the world, with our environment, with the reality, with politicians, with diseases, they are often the reflection of the problems that we have with ourselves. Once we learn to be at peace with ourselves and accept ourselves with the way we are, flawsome, with our flaws, that's when you come to peace with the world.
Well, I think the word flawsome is quite motivating, inspiring. So I think it's a good word to put out there. And unfortunately, we have to wind down this segment, Christina, but it's been absolutely fascinating. I really love your insight and perspective on human nature. And I'm sure that the company, the Mindvalley, is just going to continue to prosper and influence people in a positive way. So where can people find out about Mindvalley?
Well, mindvalley.com is where you find about Mindvalley. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, it can't be any simpler than that. You're listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and, unfortunately, not Elizabeth Gearhart tonight, but we'll be right back after this message. Welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit, and embracing our imperfect selves here is Richard Gearhart, and I'd like to welcome my co-host, Coach Kenya Gipson. How are you doing today, Kenya?
I'm very good, and I'm very happy to be here. We just had a really great conversation with Christina from Mindvalley, and which leads us to our power move for today. So it kind of all worked together hand in hand.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So for our first new power move of the year, we're We're going to talk about Usher. So if you've been living under a rock, I'm sure everyone knows who Usher is, right? He's been in the music business for the last 2+ decades. And I was just looking at his career. He did some performances in Las Vegas over the holiday. And I was just like, God, this guy is so good at like reinventing himself and staying so relevant and just staying so up to course. What is his secret to reinvention? And just taking a back look at his career, he always did things simultaneously. Like he always sang simultaneously. He always associated that with doing acting or doing something in the sphere of entertainment that he felt very passionate about. And he never just did one thing at one time. And when I was looking at that, I was like, God, like how hard would it be to sing and act at the same time? You know, how hard would it be to create multiple things at the same time? And he's just really mastered this in a way where he's kept himself very busy and very successful. He's a part owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He has his own creative entertainment company that he started years ago where he actually signed Justin Bieber. And that's been the secret to his success, is being, you know, co-creative and just doing multiple things that he's been super passionate about. And that's really been able to help him stay innovative and really stay at the top of his game. So I wanted to give him Power Move today because I think that there's something to be said about someone who's accomplished such things.
Absolutely. Somebody in the business sphere we can all look up to and who has been successful and made all the right moves. Where all that talent comes from, I'm not really sure, but if I could have just a little bit of it, I'd certainly enjoy having it. So that's absolutely fantastic. So now we're on to our presenters this evening, and we have two. The first person up is Greg Fisher, who's going to be telling us about TripShock. Greg, welcome to the show. Tell us about TripShock.
Thanks for having me. So TripShock is a online marketplace for activities and tours. We partner with tour and activity rental suppliers across mainly the southern US, and we sell their tickets and tours to customers. So we're kind of like a leg of their marketing. And this will be our 14th season. I started the company as a young lad at 23. Went through hurricanes, oil spills, you name it, a red tide, COVID. And we came out actually fairly strong. It's a very interesting travel environment right now with COVID. But there's some really interesting trends that are developing or have been developing in, domestically, internationally. But
what are those trends? That's really interesting. It's got to be really interesting to be in the travel business right now.
Yeah, it's it's been very, very emotional. Let's just put it that way, from having to furlough all of my employees to getting them back, to having record numbers, to not knowing what I'm going to do with all the money, that the company made and investments. Yeah, literally, it's been the biggest roller coaster in my entire life. It's funny because when I started the business, the BP oil spill hit 4 months. So as all this oil is approaching the beaches in Florida where we started, I'm like, okay, well, what do I do next? But this has definitely been way more stressful. But what's happening in travel right now is, since people are skeptical of cruises and traveling international because of the COVID restrictions, getting COVID, spreading it, they're staying domestically in the US. And where they're going to places such as beaches and mountains. And they want to do stuff outdoors. They want to do stuff with just their family and their friends. And that has opened up a huge opportunity for people to start side businesses. They give a huge opportunity for parks and people renting boats and jet skis and all sorts of things that are outdoor and private. So we saw our revenue double from 2019 and 2021 as people came in mass to states in the South, or just states just in general that were fairly open, that had not crazy restrictions, and they wanted to actually vacation again like they used to. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer, like, if you're outside, that's the best way to be in, to discover and travel right now, is to be outside with just your family. doing things outside. I mean, I do love museums and I do like and all that stuff too. But at the end of the day, like this is where we're at right now. And this is the way to keep our family safe and also have fun. And so there's just been an absolute explosion in domestic travel in these markets. And if you just look at U.S. Tour Travel Association, they came out with some information. They're saying that the travel industry as a whole is not going to really get back to 2019 levels till 2023. But I do believe that U.S. domestic travel for outdoor markets are still going to have extremely strong growth in 2022. So we're expecting actually a really strong year, especially with Omicron kind of adding another layer. I was thinking like, okay, if Omicron didn't hit, maybe we'd be back to some normalcy. But I think 2022 is going to be probably the same situation where we're going to see more people just traveling domestically and getting in their car and driving places where they can go outdoor and just be away from people.
Kenya?
Yeah, I was going to say, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've been trying to figure out ways to escape the house for the last, 2 years like everybody else. And I think, little small family trips and going to the beach and any way that we've been able to disconnect has been super helpful. I mean, there's a lot of therapeutic benefits, even mentally, for what you're talking about in terms of just getting away. Where do you see the connection between, what you're doing and maybe what Christina is doing with Mindvelly? Because I just think that there's definitely some synergies that are there in terms of like mental health and, travel that people really need right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not into I don't get to talk with the customers as much as I used to, but just the feedback from a reservations department, when they're talking to customers and they're helping them plan their itineraries, it's amazing to hear how many people are like, we've been stuck in our home for, months. And this is going to change everything for our families. Like these moments, like these experiences. When you book travel and you book your hotel, your airline, even though those items are very, centered when you're planning your vacation, but really it's the experiences you have. It's, renting a boat and taking a ride through the coast, or taking a parasailing trip, or going on a tour excursion to see dolphins or whales. Like these are the experiences that you remember from a vacation, not necessarily, your hotel, right? Your hotel, you sleep and you eat. So our part of the business, the experiences, I think is the most important part. Like we have an obligation to make sure that we connect travelers with these experiences, especially right now in COVID, because they missed a year or two. Like grandma and grandpa missed these memories with their grandkids. So we have an obligation to make sure we connect them with great experiences and make sure they're safe, because we do make sure the operators list their COVID procedures and stuff like that. And we don't necessarily force them to, but at least we give the customers information like, are the staff wearing masks and things like that, so they can make a decision whether or not they want to, go on a tour. Because we do sell some of the larger passenger boats and there's less social distancing. So, they have to take that into consideration. But that's one way we're kind of adapting to this new normal. And the
Christina,
second thing that
do you have any questions or comments for Greg? Especially relating back to what Kenya brought up, and that was sort of the mental health piece along with the travel piece.
You asked me, right? I didn't hear the first word. Yeah. No, I think experiences are amazing, because experiences are what actually gives you the transformation, not the knowledge very often. And people sometimes miss that bit. So I think, people should chase experiences above all in their life. I totally agree with that. So thank you for what you're doing. Question, yeah.
So Greg, you said you notice definitely a trend more now toward outdoor experiences. Do you have any metrics around that? I mean, do you think it's, has the interest in outdoor experiences grown by a factor of, 5 or 10%, or how do you, and then do you think that will continue to sustain itself even if the pandemic eventually wanes?
So prior to the pandemic, there already was an trend in water sports, outdoor activities. So we had a conference in October. We had a analyst, his name Douglas Quimby from Arrival Travel, and he's done a lot of research actually on consumer behavior when it comes to outdoor and water sports. And his, I forget, I don't have the exact metric, but his words during the presentation was, "This is something I've never seen in travel. The increase from 2019 to 2021 of people wanting to do outdoor experiences." And it makes a lot of sense, because if I talk to a lot of our suppliers that do, sailing and outdoor tours, they all had record growth. Some of them 500-600x. I saw their prices go up, and obviously we're selling them, prices moving up. It was just phenomenal. Like, people came in droves this spring and summer. And the reason why I believe that it's going to continue is because there's still people skeptical of traveling, doing cruises. They're still skeptical of going international. And I think, we have one more year of this really strong domestic travel. And who knows what 2023 could be. I do still think it's going to sustain, because people are now, they're discovering their backyard. Like, I do see comments of people like, well, we never got in the car and actually drove around to see what was near us, and realized there's some cool stuff, going to the rural areas of your hometown, and maybe doing like agro-tourism, visiting farms and buying from local farmers and doing that experiences. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff in our backyard, and we just don't
even recognize it. Well,
yeah.
Thanks a lot, Greg. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Sure.
But we appreciate your insight, and also wish TripShock the best. Where can people find TripShock?
Yeah, just Google TripShock.com and you can start looking for all the different things that we offer. We have about 1,500 different tours and 25 different destinations.
That's great. I'm definitely going to check it out. I mean, we do have a trip coming up in March, but then after that, we're out of ideas. So it sounds like TripShock would be a great place to get some. So,
for sure.
Thanks a lot. You're listening to Passage to Profit with Richard Gearhart, and unfortunately, my co-host Elizabeth is not here tonight, but we'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back, everybody. Passage to Profit, and I'm Richard Gearhart, unfortunately without his lovely co-host Elizabeth Gearhart. As our final presenter today, we have Jessica Jackely, who is going to be talking about Alltruists. So take it away.
Thank you for having me. So Alltruists creates at-home volunteer and impact projects for kids and families. 90% of people say that they want to volunteer, and only about a third of us get around to doing so. And there are very legitimate reasons for that. It's hard to find opportunities, hard to schedule them, but there's some other more challenging barriers that come up when you want to include your kids. Sometimes different age levels, abilities make it such that it's not even allowed to include your kids when you're trying to go do a traditional volunteer activity. So what we've done is create sort of this everything you need, repackaged, sort of reinvented experience where you get to learn, build empathy, do at least one, if not several impact activities, do some learning projects as well, have a donation component, and then sort of wrap it all up with a bunch of do more suggestions so that families can, and they often do, use this as a bridge into deeper involvement. My background is it began with nonprofits. This is my 6th startup, but my very first was a nonprofit called Kiva. And we were so fortunate to be right in the beginning sort of wave of crowdfunding way back in 2005. And I got to see Kiva grow tremendously over time. I think it just crossed 1.6 billion in loans, and it's in $25 at a time from person to person in these zero interest loans. So I just fell in love with building companies, building organizations, nonprofit, for-profit, whatever. I'm agnostic as to structure. It's tax code, not a religion. You can kind of do good with whatever the vehicle is that you need to get to your destination. But watching Kiva grow really convinced me that it's worth building disruptive products and technologies that bet on the good in people. So that's what I'm trying to do again with Alltruists.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And you've devoted your life to, charity work, I guess, for lack of a better term. Maybe there's a better one. What drew you to this kind of work as opposed to something maybe in the commercial sector?
I don't find it very interesting. I find it most interesting to think not just about, building a little machine that can have revenue, but all of the other ways, all the other bottom lines, if you will, that exist, whether I think we all recognize and name them or not. I think I did some work recently in, I worked with a retail bank, and basically the product that we sort of tried to launch into the world included this feedback where you could swipe your debit card and get a really simplified sort of score, like 1 to 100 on the company that you just interacted with. And that score sort of told you, and again, a very simplified way, although there were a ton of data points that fed into this, is this company good or not so good, or somewhere in the middle for people and planet? I think companies that aren't thinking about ESG factors, aren't thinking about their social impact, are sort of asleep at the wheel, and over time will not win because they're not having the most broad and comprehensive understanding of risk and opportunity. So to me, I would like to think that, you know, up until now, a lot of my work has been sort of under the heading of social entrepreneurship. I think we all have an impact, good, bad, or ugly. It's just about understanding, naming it, and following it through. And talking about sort of what you want to do in terms of all the other ways you have an impact in the world, right? Cultural impact, behavioral impact. It's not just social impact in a broad sense. There's a lot of other ways to show up and to create value. There's a lot of other people to serve beyond paying customers. And so I find the social sector and nonprofits in particular just so much more intellectually challenging. And it also really aligns and helps me feel like I live an integrated life where I get to show up every day and spend my working hours expressing values that matter to me. So it feels very, very fulfilling.
So just to put you on the spot a little bit.
Do it, bring it.
So which is more important as a social entrepreneur? And the answer can't be both, okay? Which is more important? Is the financial component more important? Not necessarily for you personally, but maybe just for the health of the business.
I preemptively disagree with your question. It is both, but there is priority. There's priority.
All right, so what is your priority then, or versus the social good that you're doing by, you know, implementing these projects?
I mean, I think you step back. I teach a course at USC called Entrepreneurial Solutions to the Global Goals. And I think if you step back and say, what are we trying to do here? Like, what is the outcome we want to have? That's the first question to answer. What's the change? I mean, and this should be the question I would like to think with any venture, right? What's the vision? What are you trying to get done? Mm-hmm. After that, it's mechanics. So what kind of, I mean, here's one of the falsehoods. Nonprofits and for-profits both, and everything in between. There's so many different ways to form a venture, right? It's different language, different words for the same principles. So nonprofits, I've run sustainable nonprofits. That's nonprofit speak for profitable. It's just about building a machine that can create and capture, you know, deliver enough value and capture value so that it can run and it can kind of feed the engine, right? So that's sort of it's funny, it's just a prereq. It's not the goal to continue to amass as much of that fuel as possible at all times, at all costs. That's just wrong thinking in my mind. So I know I cut you off, but I'm so sorry. But I think you're going to say,
I'm trying to be provocative here.
It's fun.
So, I mean, at one point, I mean, if you've accomplished your social mission, then would you stop?
You should. Or you can, once you have the thing running, I mean, it's not like there's a shortage of work to be done in the world or things to fix or people to serve. So I would like to think once you get up and running, and I mean, that's a whole other conversation, right? About mission drift or just pivoting. But in the particular thing that I'm just super passionate about right now, you look at the volunteer economy, and that might strike, that phrasing might seem weird, but think about this, every year, just in the US, people do overcome those barriers to volunteer, and they work their butts off to sign up for opportunities and to, are you ready? Give away $300 billion in time and talent and expertise. They're giving this away. And why are they doing that? Because there's this, I think, just totally intriguing exchange of value that's happening, where people want to contribute to something meaningful. They want to contribute to something bigger than themselves. It feels good. I'm sure that our other guests, right? I'm sure that Christina can tell us all sorts of things about the benefits of generosity and giving back. I'm sure that's, I mean, if there's not a Mindvelly course specifically on that, I'd love to do that. But so it's good for us to do this, right? We do get something out of it, but nobody's really managing that exchange of value. You look at nonprofits, and again, a lot of my background is I've logged a lot of years working with and inside of and starting nonprofits.
So Christina,
the job of those entities is to serve the customer they decide to serve. It's a very tall order, not just to parse out what might be useful and helpful for a volunteer to do, but then manage that whole experience over time. Who lives in the middle of this exchange of value?
Sure.
That's where we want to live as a company. We want to help manage and repackage it. Yeah.
I just want to hear what Christina has to say.
Oh yeah, maybe she can go for it.
Discussion. And if you have any questions, Christina.
Yeah, I do. Actually, before I went into business, I also dedicated a lot of my time to nonprofits. I prefer that word to charity. Actually, I don't like charity too much. And I've done a lot of different social work around the world for nothing. You can call it altruism, maybe. And yes, Jessica, it's absolutely true. There's a lot of research that shows that altruism is one of the ways to make you feel better. Although I would love to see people not going into charity just to make themselves feel better, but to actually solve problems. What I loved about your presentation is that you brought in the aspect of economically sound sense in nonprofit work. I believe that's something that charity is missing to a great degree. We often do it out of guilt, out of some kind of interesting feelings, rather than out of trying to solve a problem, out of looking into it as something which, because I've seen marginalized communities. I actually worked with refugees in Asia. Everybody, even the most helpless person, has dignity. And your dignity as a human being requires you to feel that you're a valuable part of society, which is why I actually don't like the word charity. But a question to Jessica, sorry, I couldn't go on a rant on that because it's a very dear topic to me as well. The question that I want to ask you is from another angle, because I'm also on the other side of nonprofit, where I am the person who's seeking to donate time, volunteer. We've been making soup with my kids for the homeless people here in Estonia for half a year, and then we found out that we are not needed. So the question is this: when I am on the other side of it, where I want to give, there are two questions that I have. One is when I volunteer my time, that my time is actually meaningful and not just for me to put a social media post that I did soup for the homeless people. Right. And the second question is when I give money, how can I make sure that it's not going to go into administration of the charity, but actually do be meaningful donation? So I was just wondering if what you're doing, the Alltruists, if you guys help the other side of charity. With these questions. Yes. Thanks.
No, so to answer your first question, those are great. That's why we exist. We want to make it easier for people to find opportunities. And even during these crazy times when you cannot leave your house, right? We all want to go out and travel and work with TripShock and go on the adventures that Greg's planning for us. But when we can't, when we are stuck inside, and or when we have kids that we want to involve, I mean, it's a big task to translate these difficult issues to an understandable and appropriate, truthful but not terrifying level for our kids. So that's part one of what we exist to do. So I hope that we can find more, we can continue to create opportunities for people to do that at home. In terms of your second question, if I may be provocative back and do this, I think it's the wrong question. There shouldn't be a fear of nonprofits compensating their teams well and having administrative costs. Nobody doesn't buy an iPhone because they're worried that some person made too much with their salary. Like, we should compensate well people who are solving problems effectively. It is not a fear of mine. It's not the main thing that I look for. I think it's like a nice kind of first metric to look at. And I've seen a lot of people get a little bit obsessed with this number. Like, it has to be administrative costs have to be under 10%. Why? Why do we have that assumption about this particular structure of an organization?
Well, I mean, that's because there was a big hoop to do with the Red Cross a long time ago, where sure. Which created a very negative perception, and then everybody became obsessed with it, probably wrongly, but that was the precursor for that. But
I hear you, and in this personal inurement law, I totally get that. I think it's just the beginning of a bigger story around what does a nonprofit exist to do? What are they getting done? What are their metrics? And then let's talk about how much does it cost to get those things done? And do we think that's an appropriate cost or not? That's all.
Kenya, do you have a question or comment?
No, I mean, I'm just enjoying this wonderful dialogue. You know, it's sometimes we don't get an opportunity to really like dig deep into, you know, causes and things that really matter to us. And I love what you're doing with your platform and your boxes. And I want to talk a little bit about what someone can expect when they receive one of your boxes.
Oh my goodness, twist my arm. I love to geek out on our products. So as an example, our very first box that we launched was on homelessness. So in this box, again, we talk about these like 5 steps, but we're trying to communicate in a more simplified way, but we'll go a little more detail for you. So first there's a learn component. So there's about 1,000 words that usually I draft. We have a team of folks getting this content out that and basically has this overview on the issue. Fun facts, not so fun facts, words to know, answers to tough questions so that parents don't have to feel intimidated, like, oh, here we go, Pandora's box of like tough stuff to talk about. So we help give parents a guide. And it's this lovely illustrated little booklet that is fun and quick to get through. The second piece is empathy building. In my dream world, which I'm trying to create through these things, everybody takes a minute to like really try their very best from the comfort of their living room, right, to walk in someone else's shoes. So we include stories usually of kids who are experiencing the issue at hand in a very different way than probably most users. Most of our customers have experienced homelessness or lack of clean water or whatever else the issue is, you know, food insecurity. So we tell stories. We tell real stories of real people who've experienced that. Then there's learning activities and impact activities. Then the impact activity, the volunteer project, if you will, is really the heart of the whole experience. For the homelessness box, kids make a keychain and then they write a little card that they package up and put in our prepaid mailer and send off to our partner. And that keychain and card is given to a family in Mexico right as they're moving into a new home built by our nonprofit partner. So kids and families get to insert themselves into this really sweet, special moment, add a little bit of joy and, you know, sense of community and like this, the world's cheering you on as people receive this, as they have this incredibly important moment in their lives. For the food insecurity project, kids help decorate a reusable grocery bag that goes to a food pantry that we partner with. There, you know, there's one on saving the pollinators, and the box always becomes something. Anyone who has kids knows that's like a thing that's going to happen regardless. So the box becomes a pollinator hotel. Our one that shipped this month, and I just received yesterday and did with my kids last night, is on energy poverty. And the box enables the gift of a solar light to a family in Tanzania. And kids get to, again, add a note with that. And there's glow in the dark stickers. It's really sweet and fun. So there's all sorts of interesting issues, and kids get to sort of do something meaningful. Again, is this like moving the needle impact every time? Sometimes, and sometimes it's an act of kindness and sweetness. And most importantly, it's a way to engage and ignite the curiosity in kids and families to start to learn more, do more, give more, right? To wrap it up, there's also a give component and sort of a lot of other resources we provide to make it easy for people to keep taking action.
It sounds absolutely fantastic. And so how can people find you and your company, and how do they get involved?
Please do go to Alltruists, ALLTRUISTS, Alltruists.com.
Thank you so much, Jessica. You're doing wonderful work, and so good to know you. And we're glad our audience got a chance to experience your experience. And we'll be back right after this. Passage to Profit. Welcome back, everybody, to Passage to Profit. We're just having all sorts of fun behind the scenes here. It was a wonderful show, wasn't it, Kenya?
It was an amazing conversation.
Absolutely, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And leading off was our guest, Kristina Mand-Lakhiani, who is the co-founder of Mindvalley, personal growth and transformation company, who does all sorts of fantastic personal growth programs. You really need to check out the website. I think it's marvelous. And the company Mindvalley can be found at www.mindvalley.com, of course. And then after that, we had Greg Fisher, who presented on TripShock, and he can be found at TripShock.com. Lots of fresh ideas for the travel industry and really making travel available even during these difficult pandemic times. And finally, Jessica Jackely, who presented for Alltruists, a unique company that allows families and children to participate in volunteer work remotely. So really a great idea, and hopefully bring a lots of positive change and kindness to the world. And of course, our very own Kenya Gipson, iHeartMedia maven. Where can people reach you, Kenya?
Kenya Gipson with a P, Gipson at iHeartMedia.com.
Great. But before we go, Christina, do you have a few final words for our audience?
Well, we had a conversation on so many interesting and good topics. So I guess I'll finish with a quote, which is very dear to me. I want to quote Oscar Wilde. I think he's a genius when it comes to funny and very sharp quotes. You know, love for yourself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. So I guess my parting words would be, you know, sort out your relationship with yourself, fall in love with yourself. I think it's going to make the world so much better for everyone, actually.
What a great sentiment. And Kenya? Final words?
That was a great quote. I don't think I can top that. But I too enjoyed this conversation. And I would say the one thing that you all have in common with your platforms and what you're contributing is solving the world's problems, right? You know, I think about what Christina is doing with Mindvalley and the professional and the personal transformation that happens on that platform, you know, and Greg with TripShock. You know, you have over 1,000 plus options for families to escape and spend some time together, which I know is really incredibly important during this time. And Jessica, with what you're doing with Alltruists, you know, teaching empathy is not always the easiest task. And I think what you're doing with your platform and your boxes and how you're connecting causes to children and to families is incredible. So I just wanted to say thank you to you all for your contribution to society, because what you're doing is super important.
Thank you for the great conversation, everyone.
Well, thank you. And unfortunately, we have to sign off now. Thanks to our audience for listening. We love you, and we'll be back again next week with another Passage to Profit episode. I'd like to thank our producer, Noah Fleischman, our program coordinator, Alicia Morrissey, our video editor, Chatterboss, and the whole iHeart team. And I am making a public wish to my wife, Elizabeth Gearhart, that she get better soon. And that's it for us tonight. You're listening to WOR 710, the voice of New York. Okay,
That's it. That was a really great show, everyone.